Shakespeare's Hamlet. The play opens at Elsinore, Denmark, where Francisco is at his post on a platform before the castle. Bernardo comes and relieves him from guard duty. Then Horatio and Marcellus arrive. Marcellus asks, "Has the thing appeared again?" But the thing appears then. It is actually the ghost of the dead king of Denmark. When Horatio speaks to the ghost moves out of sight, looking offended. Actually, it was Bernardo who saw the ghost first. He brought Marcellus, and Marcellus brought Horatio there. When they talk about a threat of war from young Fortinbras of Norway, the ghost reappears. Horatio repeatedly asks the ghost to speak, but the ghost disappears at cockcrow. Horatio decides to inform of what they have seen to Hamlet. All the three believe that the ghost will definitely speak to Hamlet. Next scene opens in a room in the castle. The King Claudius, the Queen Gertrude, Hamlet's mother, Counselor Polonius, Laertes, Polonius's son, Cornelius and Voltiman, the courtiers, and others are seen. The king talks about the sudden death of the king, and he is marrying his sometime sister for the welfare of the state. Then about a war threat from young Fortinbras. He asks Cornelius and Voltiman to talk to the bedridden uncle of young Fortinbras about this and sends them. Then gives permission to Laertes to return to France. Then the king and queen ask Hamlet to throw off his gloomy looks and not to go back to Wittenberg, Germany. Though Hamlet says, "I shall in all my best obey you, madam," he can't digest both the death of his father and the remarriage of his mother. Among the long 7 soliloquies, the first one comes in this scene, where he says, "Frailty, thy name is woman," on thinking about the weakness of his mother. Then he says, "My father's brother, but no more like my father than I to Hercules," and he is comparing his uncle with his father. Then Horatio, Marcellus, and Bernardo come and inform what they saw. Hamlet assures them to meet them there between 11 and 12 to see and talk to his father's ghost. Next scene opens at Polonius's house. Laertes talks to his sister Ophelia, who is in love with Hamlet. He urges her to become more cautious in her dealing with Hamlet. Polonius too endures them. After the departure of Laertes, he too expresses the same distrust of Hamlet's love for her. As Ophelia is a simple-minded girl, she promises her father that she will not encourage Hamlet's advances. Next scene opens at the platform before the castle. Hamlet informs Horatio and Marcellus that the king is busy merrymaking in the company of his courtiers for Hamlet's deciding to stay in Denmark. Then the ghost appears and makes a gesture to Hamlet to follow it. Horatio and Marcellus dissuade Hamlet from following the ghost, but Hamlet follows the ghost. The comment of Marcellus, something is rotten in the state of Denmark, is significant in every sense. In the next scene, Hamlet learns from the ghost that it had been given out that when sleeping in the orchard, Hamlet's father had been bitten by a serpent and had died of the serpent's sting. But know, thou noble youth, the serpent that did sting thy father's life now wears his crown. The ghost calls Claudius incestuous, adulterate beast, but the ghost spares his wife Gertrude and says, leave her to heaven. Here the ghost believes that she will experience the pangs and pricks of her guilty conscience that will not let her rest peacefully. But the ghost insists that if Hamlet ever had any love for his father, he should take revenge upon the man who murdered him. The ghost then departs, leaving Hamlet shocked and stunned by the strange disclosure. Horatio and Marcellus then come and ask what the ghost has said. Hamlet tells them that he will behave and talk as if he had gone crazy. He asks them not to disclose what they saw there to anyone. Actually, Hamlet wants to get confirmed the murder of his father done by his uncle Claudius. In the next scene, we see Polonius setting his servant Reynaldo as a spy on his son Laertes, who is in France. Polonius wants Reynaldo to bring him complete information regarding his son's mode of life and his activities. Then Ophelia enters and tells her father that she feels terribly frightened on seeing the strange behavior of Hamlet. Polonius interprets that it is due to the disappointment caused to him by her rejecting his advances under her father's order. We find the king and queen who are asking Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, the former schoolfellows of Hamlet, to find out what is afflicting Hamlet. Then Polonius enters and informs the king that Cornelius and Voltimand have returned from Norway with good news. Actually, young Fortinbras has some dispute with Poland, not with Denmark. Having heard this, the king sends them. Then Polonius reads out one of the Hamlet's love letters addressed to Ophelia, to the king and queen. By this, he wants the king and queen get convinced that the cause for Hamlet's changed behavior is nothing but Ophelia's rejection of Hamlet's love. So they decide to hide behind an arras while Ophelia's meeting Hamlet in the lobby. After the departure of the king and queen, Hamlet enters and talks to Polonius. On seeing Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, he leaves. Hamlet comes to know from the talk of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern that they have been sent by the king and queen. He also comes to know that A performance of the players have been arranged to entertain him. Polonius too enters with the actors. Hamlet asks one of the actors to recite the speech that describing the murder of Priam by Pyrrhus and the grief of Priam's wife Hecuba at her husband's death. The heartrending words bring tears in the eyes of the actor. This makes him say, "What is Hecuba to him or he to her, that he should weep for her? Yet I, a dull and muddy little rascal, and curse him for not taking revenge upon his uncle who killed his father." However, Hamlet makes the actors perform the murder of Gonzago and insert in it a speech of a few lines written by Hamlet. Really, the play is about a villain murdering his brother, a king, and then marrying the widow of the dead brother. So he believes the play is a thing wherein I will catch the conscience of the king. He is in need of some more convincing evidence than the words of a ghost to prove the guilty of his uncle Claudius. The next scene opens in a room in the castle, where we see the King Claudius, the Queen Gertrude, Polonius, Ophelia, Rosencrantz, and Guildenstern. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern say that Hamlet has invited the king and the queen to hear and see the performance of the plays. When the king agrees to do so, they leave. Then Claudius tells about their plan of watching Hamlet when he talks with Ophelia. Before the departure of Gertrude, she tells Ophelia that she would be happy if it is for the love of Ophelia that Hamlet is feeling distracted. When Hamlet enters, Claudius and Polonius hide themselves and overhear. On seeing Ophelia, he asks her not to think of marriage but to go to a nunnery. Ophelia feels sorry when he says, "No, not I. I never gave you aught." On her asking him to get back the tokens of his love, then he leaves her, as Claudius believes that some other thing has caused the distract in Hamlet than the love of Ophelia. He decides to send him to England. But Polonius needs one more chance to prove the same. So he wants Hamlet to talk to his mother and overhear the conversation. However, the king agrees to this. We have the play within the play, the mousetrap, in the next scene. All have gathered. Hamlet sits at Ophelia's feet when Gertrude asks him to sit near her. The play begins. A king and a queen appear on the stage and exchange their love and loyalty. When the queen departs, he begins to sleep. Then his nephew appears and pours poison into the sleeping king's ear. On seeing it, the agitated king gets up and leaves, followed by the queen and all others. Hamlet is left alone with Horatio, whom Hamlet has appointed to watch his uncle during the performance. Now it is clear to Hamlet that King Claudius is really guilty of having poisoned his father to death. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern come and say that his mother, the queen, wants to speak to Hamlet in her chamber. Hamlet says in his mind, I will speak daggers to her. In the next scene, we find the king asks Guildenstern and Rosencrantz to get ready to proceed to England, taking Hamlet with them. Here, in a soliloquy, Claudius speaks of his guilt and kneels to pray. Hamlet sees this and is about to kill him. But he decides not to kill Claudius and send him straight to heaven. He postpones his revenge. In the next scene, Polonius informs the arrival of Hamlet to her chamber and hides behind a tapestry. Hamlet enters and says that it is a shame that she has had a remarriage at her age and become a slave to lustful desires. As he speaks rudely, Gertrude shouts for help. Unfortunately, Polonius too shouts for help. Hamlet makes a pass with his word through the tapestry and kills Polonius, saying, How now? A rat dead for a ducat, dead. The shocked queen is thunderstruck on seeing Hamlet talking to the vacant space and says that he is talking to his dead father. Actually, the ghost appears there to remind him of the revenge. In the next scene, we see the queen tells the king that Hamlet has killed the good old Polonius in his mad condition. The king asks Rosencrantz and Guildenstern to bring the dead body of Polonius. On seeing Hamlet, the king asks him to get ready to go to England. The king sending Hamlet to England is to have him killed there. The Norwegian army under the command of Fortinbras is seen in the next scene. They are on their way to Poland to take possession of some territory there. They are seen by Hamlet accompanied by Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Hamlet again reproaches himself for having delayed his revenge so long. Ophelia's distracted condition is seen in the next scene. To the enquiries of the king and queen, Ophelia sings snatches of old songs that reflects her love and father's death. Laertes enters then with a riotous mob and asks the king what has happened to his father. The king convinces Laertes and says that he will help him to put the axe of punishment on the guilty man who killed his father. We see Horatio, who receives a message from a few sailors in the next scene. From the message, Horatio comes to know that the ship in which Hamlet was sailing to England attacked by pirates. They took Hamlet as a prisoner. However, the king's plan of getting Hamlet killed in England hasn't taken place. Instead, as Hamlet corrected the letter of the king, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern will be killed in England. Moreover, Hamlet instructs Horatio to take those sailors to the king as they have a letter of Hamlet to be delivered to the king. In the next scene, the king receives the message of Hamlet saying that he will meet the king the next day. The king asks Laertes to challenge Hamlet to a fencing match where he can kill Hamlet by using a rapier, the point of which will be dipped in a deadly poison. Thus he may take revenge for the death of his father. Laertes too agrees to do so. The queen enters then and informs Laertes that his sister has drowned in a brook. Laertes' grief over the news of the death of Ophelia is heartrending. We are taken to the churchyard in the next scene. A grave digger is digging a grave. Actually, it is for Ophelia. On finding that Ophelia is dead, Hamlet is shocked. Laertes leaps into the grave and wants to get buried. On seeing this, Hamlet too leaps into the grave and says that 40,000 brothers could not love her as much as he loved her. However, the king tries to soothe them. In the next scene, Hamlet talks to Horatio and expresses his regret for his behavior in the graveyard. Then Osric enters and informs that the king has arranged a fencing match between Hamlet and Laertes. Though Horatio tries to prevent Hamlet, he agrees to play the match. All is set for the fencing match. Apart from the sword dipped in a deadly poison to be given to Laertes to wound Hamlet, the king has also got a cup of poisoned wine to be given to Hamlet if anything happens in the other way round. Before the match begins, Hamlet apologizes to Laertes for his words and deeds in the graveyard. Laertes accepts the apology. The match begins. Hamlet wins the first two rounds, and the queen picks up the cup of poisoned wine and drinks to Hamlet's health before the king preventing her to do so. In the third round, though Laertes wounds Hamlet, the rapiers get changed in the scuffle. Then Hamlet wounds Laertes. Thus both are wounded by the poison-dipped sword. The queen falls, and as she dies, she tells Hamlet that she has been poisoned. The dying Laertes too tells Hamlet of the king's treachery. Then Hamlet says, "The point envenomed too, then venom to thy work," and kills Claudius with the poisoned sword. Before his death, Hamlet says, "Horatio, I am dead. Thou livest. Report me and my cause aright to the unsatisfied." Moreover, he says that He gives his voice to Fortinbras to be elected as the next king of Denmark. Fortinbras at the end pays a tribute to Hamlet by saying that Hamlet would have given an excellent account of himself if he had become the king of Denmark.